Greetings, everyone. My name is DJ Wells. I'm the Executive Director of the Mensa Research Institute. Thank you for joining us once again for our monthly series of webinars intended to build excitement and get us moving forwards as we get ready for our upcoming Integrative Mental Health Summit. Of course, this grew out of last year's Integrative Mental Health Summit. We had such great conversations that we just wanted to keep the conversation going. And so this is our opportunity to keep that conversation going until we meet again for the larger conference in October. And our partner, Brea Wallen, the Executive Director of Journey's Dream, she's going to be leading today's discussion, a conversation with Brad Yates. And she'll also talk a little bit about the upcoming summit. So rather than bore you with a lot of me, I'm going to hand it off to Brea. Brea, take it away.
Thank you so much, DJ. So happy to be here with all of you today and with Brad Yates. As DJ mentioned, this webinar series evolved from our first annual Integrative Mental Health Summit back in October of 2021. And we just selected and are announcing the dates for this year's event, which are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, October 7th, 8th, and 9th. We'll be meeting virtually again, and that's from noon to 6 p.m. Eastern time. So please make a note. Feel free to go out to integrativementalhealthsummit.org. Tickets are available now for a very small donation. And without further ado, I want to give a brief introduction to our phenomenal guest today, Mr. Brad Yates, who for more than 20 years has been helping people through blocks, resistance, fears, so they can become the best versions of themselves. And he has been interviewed in many athletics. He works with CEOs, with professionals, has a phenomenal YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, do check it out. Has more than 1,100 free tutorial videos there. So I could go on and on and on and on and on about all of the ways that Brad is awesome and all of the phenomenal ways that he has helped humanity. But rather than do that, I'd rather actually hear from you, Brad. So I'd like to start with just a fundamental question, because I know some people have heard of tapping, some people are familiar with EFT or the emotional freedom technique, but certainly many people are not very familiar with it. So could you start us out today with just a brief introduction to what is EFT tapping and maybe a little bit about how or why it works?
Yeah, thank you, Brea. Although I'd rather you just kept going on saying how awesome I am, but but okay, no, that's all right.
Back to that.
Because who couldn't have more of that? No, thank you. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share this. I was grateful for the opportunity to be on a panel in last year's summit with a bunch of doctors. So I should be clear that I'm not a doctor. I just played one on TV. And but very excited to be able to share about EFT, emotional freedom techniques, especially with folks who haven't heard of this. It's a very simple technique, a mind-body technique that we often simply call tapping, because it is literally a process of tapping with our fingertips on our face and torso. And for those of you that are new to this, I know that it might sound a little strange. It's like, why on earth are they having someone talk about this? But it's very effective, sometimes very rapidly effective in downregulating stress. So when we look at so many of the emotional disturbances that we experience are caused by, or at least worsened by, stress. Same with a lot of our physical ailments. So to have a very simple technique for downregulating stress is very valuable. It can be beneficial in all kinds of different situations. So originally it was based on acupuncture. So for thousands of years in Chinese medicine, they have said there's a flow of energy through the body along these pathways that are called meridians. And when this energy is flowing naturally, we experience our natural state of health and well-being physically and emotionally. And when the energy gets stuck, we don't feel so good, and we experience disturbance physically and or emotionally. So in traditional Chinese medicine, the doctor would stick needles in these same key points to help stimulate that healthy flow of energy. and we're just using our fingertips to tap on these points. It was a series of discoveries primarily through the 70s and 80s. And then a psychologist named Roger Callahan, working with a woman with a lifelong water phobia, was simply trying to help her with the physical discomfort she experienced. He said, okay, so from a physical standpoint, what do you experience? And she said, well, I get a knot in my stomach. And he'd been learning about kinesiology and acupressure. And he said, okay, well, let's see, the stomach meridian, one of the points is right here under the eye. Let's see if we can do something about your stomach. And tapped for a moment. And she said, it's gone. And he said, what's gone? And she said, the fear. And she runs out of the house towards the swimming pool. And he runs after her thinking, wait, stop, because she's had a lifelong water phobia. She can't swim. And she's like, don't worry, I'm not going to jump in. But she went to the edge of the water and started splashing water in her face. And she said, I feel fine. And he's thinking, oh, that's interesting. And so he started experimenting with different patients and found different algorithms tapping on different meridian points that are associated with different organs of the body, which are associated with different emotions, and found that he'd come up with different algorithms for the different things that they're experiencing. And within a year, he put himself out of business because all of his weekly patients were saying, I'm fine, I don't need that anymore. So he started teaching this process called what he called the thought field therapy. And then one of his early students was a gentleman named Gary Craig, who simplified the process and called it EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques. And as I said, a lot of us just call it tapping now. And it's just a very quick process for allowing ourselves to calm down emotionally in the moment, and then also to bring up events from the past and clear those out, clear out that emotional distress such that we can think about those things and still feel fine. And although it's based on, this ancient process, we have a growing body of scientific evidence validating this. There are chemical studies measuring the cortisol levels in a person's body before and after the tapping, dramatically lowering the cortisol levels. We have fMRI studies showing where the activity is in the brain and seeing how that activity calms down after the tapping. So it's really exciting, after years of people saying, well, anecdotally, I can say I feel better, but to also have that research validating it for those people who are, science wonks and like to see those
Want to see
tangible
the data.
results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes. It's so fascinating. And I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention up front, this is meant to be interactive. So we've got lots of people in our audience. Please submit questions. You can type them right in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen or in the chat box. And then I will make sure that we answer and address the questions. We'll have some time at the end for Q&A, but sometimes a thought just pops up as Brad's speaking. And feel free to shoot a question over, and that way I can make sure we get it in when there's an appropriate moment.
Yeah,
But
we want to try to answer whatever you can about this, because there may be a lot of questions.
Yes, that was a fantastic summary. And I know a little bit about tapping. I've used it, especially with my children and with myself. But I didn't know so much about the history of it. So that was a really fascinating little brief history of EFT. So thank you. I know you said you'd be willing to lead us through a tapping exercise. I think it's fascinating that you said it lowers cortisol. I know when I tend to get in a heightened stress state, even if I just tap for like 30 seconds, I usually have like a reduced level of stress or like heightened emotion where I can just like take a break and then think more rationally, feel better about the situation. So I'd love it if you could give us an example. Like it'd be very cool if we could walk away from this webinar and say, okay, now I feel confident enough that I could try this at some point when I would like to lower my stress. And perhaps, like you said, if an anxiety is rising, there's a lot more anxiety in the world right now. There's just a lot more potential for stress and fear. And those are things that I think when we can bring our bodies back into a healthy energy state and a physiological state, we're going to cope with that in a much happier, healthier way.
Absolutely. We have this system built up in our bodies and our brains. We have the sympathetic nervous system where this little thing called the amygdala is looking for threats. and says, oh, here's danger, and starts to get us into fight, flight, or freeze, and is pumping things like cortisol through our body and adrenaline. And then the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and says, okay, danger's over. You can all go back to your homes. Nothing more to see here. Relax. And our heart rate normalizes and our breathing normalizes and things like that. And, that was totally made sense back when we were in early stages of evolution, when this part of the brain was developing. And, when we were under real life and death threats on a more regular basis. And so what happens is when that system kicks in, the prefrontal cortex, the most modern part of our brain, the rational, part that we want to have with us at work and raising our children, and the part that thinks in the best way, it goes bye-bye when we go into fight or flight. So as we allow ourselves to calm down, and that's what the tapping is doing, it's basically expediting the parasympathetic nervous system. It allows us to calm down so that we do go back into the prefrontal cortex and we are thinking better. So at those times where we're feeling anxiety, we really want to be able to calm ourselves down so that we can find the best solution to solve whatever event we're in. So yeah, the basic version of EFT is to think about what we're experiencing. So we may just say, I'm feeling anxiety, or I'm feeling stress. And it may be more specific. I'm really stressed out about this report that's due next week. And then we'd ask, on a scale of 0 to 10, how strong is that feeling? And they say, oh, well, it's about an 8. I'm pretty stressed out about that. And then we'd try to look at what is the physical response. So how do we know that we're at an 8? Oh, my heart is beating out of my chest, or my shoulders are so tense, I'm wearing my arms like earrings. It's like, what is that feeling that's going on inside? So when we're clear on that, then we would start by tapping with the fingertips of our index and middle finger right here on the side of the opposite hand. And so we start out with a setup and we say, even though I'm feeling this stress or anxiety or this worry about the report, so whatever that phrase is, even though I'm feeling this stress, I choose to love and accept myself. So we're just making a statement of acceptance, because whatever we're feeling, it's because some part of us believes that it's necessary. I like to say that self-sabotage is simply misguided self-love. We're always trying to protect ourselves. So we sit there and go, oh, I'm in this terrible state of fear and it's so uncomfortable and I hate that this is happening. It's like, okay. However, I choose to be compassionate with that part of me that is doing that, believing it's necessary. Mm-hmm. Fear and anger, there are no negative emotions. There are emotions that are there to try to protect us. It's like a smoke detector. Right. And the fire alarm goes off. And fire alarms are not bad. It's uncomfortable to listen to, but it's a very helpful device. And so it either means, 1, there's a fire that needs to be put out, or 2, maybe the batteries need to be changed. It may be a misunderstanding. And when we're in that state of alarm, it's hard for us to see. So the tapping calms us down so that we can see, okay, what do I need to fix here? What's out of whack? Is there a fire to be put out? Is there a conversation to be had? Is there a problem to be addressed? Mm-hmm. Or is there a misunderstanding? And either way, I can fix it and be done, or just realize there's nothing to fix and relax. So that's why I want to have that statement of self-acceptance. So even though I'm having this thing, I accept myself for going through this experience. So even though I have the stress, I choose to love and accept myself. And we'll say that 3 times. Then we'll go to the next point, which is right here at the beginning of your eyebrow. And generally through these points, we'll tap them, between 5 and 10 times. It's not an exact science, so that if we're saying a phrase that's a little bit longer and we're tapping like 20 times, it's not like the body goes, it's too many times. This isn't going to work now. And now we're going to be stuck in stress. So we'll take whatever the reminder phrase is, this stress, this anxiety, this concern about the report. We'll say, all this stress. Next point is right here at the corner of your eye socket. All this stress. Right under the middle of your eye, right above your cheek, all this stress. Right below your nose, just above your upper lip, all this stress. right below your lower lip, just above your chin, all this stress. Now, right here where your collarbones just about come together, there's a little bit of a U shape at the base of your throat. And so the tapping points there are right here near the end of the collarbone on either side, but you can go ahead and use all of your fingertips or even make a fist and tap where the collarbones just about come together. Say all this stress. Next point about 4 inches below your armpit. Try about bra strap level, and I'm sure even the guys can figure out where that is. All this stress. And then finally, the top of your head. So using all of your fingertips and tapping around in circles around the crown of your head. All this stress. You take a deep breath and let it go. And then you would check in again and say, okay, now how much stress am I feeling? Now how worried am I about that report? And it might go from an 8 to a 0 like that. Sometimes happens. Sometimes it goes from an 8 to a 7.75. And, but you know, when you're experiencing stress like that, even a little bit of relief is beneficial. And what also often happens is it's like peeling the layers of the onion. And as we're tapping through, we might get more clarity. You know, it's like, oh, what am I stressed about? Or, you know, all the stress about this report. It's like, oh my goodness, you know what it is? I'm now remembering that there was that book report in the 3rd grade and I didn't get it turned in on time and I got grounded for a week. And I have always dreaded reports since that. This book report in 3rd grade, this book report in 3rd grade. And we can clear up something that we haven't been consciously aware of that has been, you know, very subtly ruining our lives for decades, you know, or at least limiting ourselves. And we may have sabotaged our careers. We may have resisted job opportunities because some part of us says, no, there'll be a report due. And you remembered 3rd grade. Yeah, let's not do that. So there are all kinds of ways that we brilliantly limit ourselves in life because of old upsets that we've been hanging on to. So that's one of the great things that happens when we're tapping is we get clarity about stuff that we've been storing in our bodies, and we can release old upsets, old trauma, and things like that.
Thank you so much. That's fascinating and interesting that if we start off feeling stressed about one thing and tapping about that we might then kind of unlock a more relevant underlying cause of what that stress is actually about. It looks like it's about one thing, but often our stress response is about something much deeper or fundamental. And it's interesting to know that this can access those things, and it can also help to clear them out so they're not impacting our decisions and choices and life at this point as well. It sounds like that's what you were sharing with us.
Yeah, it's like in therapy, they talk about the presenting problem. And it may not be the real problem, but it's like, all right, that's where we start.
Right.
And this just gives us a lot quicker access because we hide those other things, those deeper levels, because it doesn't feel safe. We don't feel like we can handle them. And as we're tapping, we feel safer. We allow ourselves to go, it's okay. I can allow myself to see this. It's okay to be free from this now. And, you know, for anyone who's seen my videos or has worked with me, it's a much more elaborate process because it's a very intuitive process for me as I start exploring, you know, what might be the other things going on here? What are the underlying circumstances? You know, trying to leave no stone unturned. But I like to show you the basic version of EFT first, because if I go into the way that I usually tap, where I'm talking about all kinds of things, then people say, wow, that's a really complicated process. I don't know how to come up with all those words. I'm not going to do EFT. It's like, no. You can simply say the same phrase over and over. You can also do it silently, because this process is going to calm down the nervous system. So if you're in a state of stress, don't worry about coming up with the words. Okay, what's the reminder phrase? What should I be saying? Just start tapping. And you could even just be tapping one point. Sometimes we may feel like sticking to one point. For a lot of people, this collarbone point, kidney 27 is the acupuncture point, tends to be related to fear. And you know, as a lot of folks will say, fear is the ultimate emotion, underlying all of the other uncomfortable feelings. stress, anger, sadness, grief, there's fear at some level underneath that. So this is a lot of folks will just use this point at times. There may be times you'll tap in through and say, okay, I'm going to go through all the points, but you may just feel like, I think I'm going to hang out here for a moment. And not even questioning that, we, as I said, the different points are associated with different emotions. Like the stomach point is under the eye and generally associated again with fear. Bladder is sadness, gallbladder is anger, and these different things. So we might find it helpful to tap on a point that's related to what we feel is the emotion we're experiencing. When Gary Craig developed EFT from thought field therapy, because thought field therapy only used a couple of points specific to what might be going on. And Gary's thought was, well, if it doesn't take that long to tap through all of the points, why not just cover all the bases?
For sure.
It's not like, oh, well, you shouldn't have tapped that point. Now it's going to ruin the whole process.
Right.
So it just simplifies.
Fascinating. So as you were talking, I was thinking about sometimes we're in an environment where it would feel really socially awkward to be like this, right? Like, oh, I'm good. Don't mind me. I'm in a meeting or at the grocery store or whatever. Are there ways to tap or to have a similar response if we aren't able to do some of those things that would be really uncomfortable in certain circumstances?
Yeah, excellent question, Brea. I'm looking forward to the day when so many people know about tapping that people can just tap in it, right? And and if you're in a meeting and it's tense and someone starts tapping, other people go, "Oh, that's a good point. We should all be tapping right now." We're not there yet, so there are ways to do it in a more subtle way. You can simply hold the point and rub it. You can just breathe while holding the point. I was at the opera once and I wasn't feeling very well, and I just held this point kind of like this, and it was totally cool, because if you go to the opera, you'll see a number of people going and I love the opera, but there are some people who show up at the opera and they're not quite prepared for what it is. Just like some people show up at a tapping seminar and they're not quite prepared for it's like, why is that guy tapping on his face? But what I love about it is that it's because you can tap without having to say anything, and it goes right to work on the nervous system. There are, stress is a huge thing. It's one of the biggest problems we face as human beings, and it's one that we dismiss so often, and we're just unaware of it, or so often I've done tapping seminars or interviews with folks, and I'll take them through and they'll say, I thought I was in a really good place and I'm feeling even more relaxed now, because we're not aware of this ambient stress that we're carrying. And it's like compound interest, and it builds. And especially in this day and age where we're all walking around with a device that is constantly saying, hey, how you feeling? Here's something else to stress out about. And we're not even aware of that. So to have something to calm that down, I recommend tapping on a daily basis, because to me it's energy hygiene or emotional hygiene. We have physical hygiene, like brushing our teeth and taking a shower, and most people do that before it's necessary. They just do it regularly as a matter of maintenance. We don't wait until someone's holding their nose around us and going, that's right, I haven't taken a shower in 3 weeks. I should probably go do that. We don't wait until we're looking in the mirror and say, oh, there's stuff growing out of my teeth. I should probably brush my teeth. But with stress, it's not until we're like freaking out. It's like, oh, I should probably do something about this.
Yeah.
And we have, we'll hear things like, well, you should eat a healthy diet, get regular exercise, get a good night's sleep, which is all great advice. In the moment when stress hits you, you can't go back and get a good night's sleep last night. Probably not the time to eat a healthy meal. You may not have the chance to go for a walk or whatever else it might be. But this is a very quick and easy way to start going, okay, now I can start to at least relax, even if it's just slightly taking the edge off. And sometimes it'll be huge. And the amount of relief that we get is very quick and very profound.
That's an excellent point. I have to say, I have left like a social conversation and where's your restroom? Go to the bathroom and then like,
Absolutely.
okay, so I'm just gonna say, make an opportunity for a moment to tap if you feel triggered or if you feel like your stress or your anxiety is raising. But I love this idea of tapping as part of our, mental emotional hygiene routine. So I've mostly used tapping in response to something negative that has happened or a feeling that is uncomfortable in my body or my emotional state. But what about tapping for like positivity? Is there a different routine or rhythm for tapping like proactively for more joy or for a sense of peace or those types of things? Is it done differently or is that such a thing? Is there such a thing as that type of approach to tapping?
Absolutely. And there are some people who have who take issue with that, and they'll say, no, tapping, it's just a cleaning process. It's only there for cleaning up dirt. It's like vacuuming. You only vacuum when there's dirt. And to me, I love doing positive tapping. When I tell people tapping's the first thing I do in the morning, and it's not because I wake up grumpy every day. Oh, even though it's another crappy day. It's not at all. I might tap while saying affirmations, like maybe something simple like, thank you for the blessings that I have. Thank you for the blessings I'm receiving. I might tap while saying prayers. I might say all kinds of positive things because I believe that nothing is so good that it can't get better.
Yeah.
And so even there are times where I'm in a really good place, it's like, yeah, I want to keep this going. And so in terms of the positivity, when people say, well, you can't tap positive things, like I choose to feel happy, because I think tapping affirmations is great, because what happens so often when we're saying an affirmation is we're trying to contradict a belief that we have.
Yes.
Like if I'm struggling financially and I try to say, I'm rich. Well, if we do it without tapping and we're saying, I'm rich. So that's the 10%, 5 to 10% of our conscious mind saying that, while the other 90 to 95% is going, you are such a liar. You are so
Yes.
full of it. We are broke. And that brings up an emotion in our body. So what happens is we're actually experiencing more of the negativity than the positive. With affirmations, the idea is if you do it long enough, you'll start to wear down the negative belief. But if we're tapping while saying the affirmation, I'm rich, and we're calming down that response, and we start to recognize, in many ways I am,
Mhm.
I, I'm getting oxygen right now. I have what I need. I, compared to some parts of the world, I'm extremely wealthy. We start to look at the ways that we can see that, and we start to feel more positive. So whether it's a matter of we're tapping in more positivity, or the way I like to think of it is that we're quick visual thing. My absolute favorite piece of art is Michelangelo's David, and I have Davids all over the place. So Michelangelo said, the statue is already there, perfect inside the marble. And all I have to do is chip away what doesn't belong to reveal the masterpiece inside. And to me, that is a perfect analogy for what we're doing with tapping. The happiest, healthiest, most successful version of ourselves is already inside. And we're just chipping away what doesn't belong. So if we're not, so in terms of our happiness, we can be tapping and chipping away whatever might be there. So you might be feeling fine, but there are times I'll be in the car and I'll be feeling fine, but it's like, I want to see if I can feel even better. If there's any stress, anything going on inside of me that might be
Yeah.
limiting my joy, that might be limiting my peace of mind, that might be limiting my success, my productivity, I think I might just clear that stuff away. And when
Yeah.
I'm doing that, I'll change the phrasing slightly. So instead of saying, even though I have this stress, I might say, I choose to feel more awesome, and I choose to love and accept myself. And we
Yeah.
can even do a tapping round on that if you'd like.
Sure. Why not? Let's do it.
Why
I'd
not?
like to feel more awesome.
Unless people don't want to feel more awesome, I don't, Um, quickly, I want to address, DJ was asking about
Yeah.
the difference between tapping and acupuncture.
Mhm.
So for one, This is something you can simply do on your own anywhere. For a lot of people, they don't like needles. And that's one of the things about acupuncture is it involves needles. And a lot of, I don't know a lot of acupuncture. Well, I don't know a lot of acupuncturists. I know several, but mostly what they're dealing with tend to be physical things. You know, it's interesting. About the, just before I learned tapping, I was actually first introduced to acupuncture when my wife used acupuncture during pregnancy. And so was seeing the benefits there. So when I learned about tapping, it's like, all right, I've already seen a positive thing about this use of the meridian system. But basically both processes are doing the same thing of correcting any imbalance in the energy system. And now as we look at tapping, there are a number of theories as to why it works. Is it that it's there's a phenomenon called piezoelectricity, so that when we're tapping, the percussion stimulates an electrical response that sends a signal to the brain that can calm down the sympathetic nervous system. We're looking at how it might interact with the vagus nerve, so the polyvagal system, this nerve that runs down the spine and interacts with different organs of the body. So there are a number of ways in which that might, the tapping is creating this calming process. And so still looking at, you know, it could be one particular one and it just looks like it's the other things. It may be all of them combined. Just the nice thing we know is that we can find from our own experience and also from these scientific measurements that, yes, there is a positive change happening. So
there's another question from Natalie. I don't know if you'd like to take it now or if we wanted to proceed with a little bit more information and come back to questions at the end. What's your preference?
Well, I'll go ahead and answer this one because it came up.
Yeah.
So there are similarities in terms of the balancing process that comes from EMDR, and there are certain similarities. I've seen EMDR done where you hold electrical pads that have stimulation, and so it has that kind of there's almost like a tapping thing that affects the nervous system in that way. You know, traditionally it's looking back and forth, but it's these are just different ways of state change in terms of where we're physically and emotionally at.
And Brad, excuse me for just a moment, just because I'm not sure all of our webinar attendees were able to see the question. I'll just restate the question quickly for them. The question was, how does tapping compare or differ from EMDR therapy? And could you briefly extrapolate on what EMDR stands for?
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna blank right. It's eye movement desensitization, repetition, something like that.
That's okay.
Sorry.
It's close enough. It's about the motion of the eyes related to.
When it was originally discovered, it was this therapist was walking down the street and was bothered about something, and found herself looking back and forth at trees or things along the walk, and noticed a calming effect, and started to explore with that. And so, as I said, the original version of EMDR was the therapist would move their finger back and forth, and you'd be moving your eye back and forth while you're thinking about the issue. And there are different versions of it now. One thing that is that with EMDR, it can sometimes abreactions can happen, and it can get a client into an emotional state, and that's why EMDR is only allowed to be used by a licensed therapist, whereas EFT tends to be a much more gentle process. Not that it's not possible for someone to get triggered. It's not really the tapping that triggers people. In all my videos, I start by saying, please take full responsibility for your own well-being. And it's not that the tapping so much does it as we're going into places and looking at things. So it's like if you have a company coming over and you want to clean up your room, and you find, oh, there's dirty laundry under the sofa, and now suddenly the room looks dirtier than it did before, and you wouldn't say, oh well, cleaning obviously makes my room dirtier. It's like, no, it's just that you are noticing.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is that when we do any kind of process and we're looking at, it's like, okay, I'm starting to look at places that I may have been avoiding. And so we want to be aware of, is this a place that I should probably have professional help with? And a lot of times it is. And we just want to, there are places we shouldn't go alone.
Mhm.
But for the most part, with EFT, it's very gentle, and we are able to, take good care of ourselves, especially when we do positive tapping, like we're gonna do now.
Okay, wonderful.
So instead of even though I'm feeling miserable, I choose to love and accept myself, we're going to turn around and say, I choose to feel more awesome. And so what I'd like you to do is go ahead and close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and hold it. And let it go. And now, just breathing comfortably with your eyes closed, just go ahead and follow your breath through your body and allow yourself to be aware of what's going on in there. And maybe rate yourself on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being awesome or magnificent or something like that. And don't judge yourself harshly if the number is lower than that. Just allow yourself to be aware of, oh, okay, this is where it's at. You might even ask yourself, what would it take to be at a 10? What would I need to know? What would I need to let go of? What gets in the way of me being at a 10? What thoughts, beliefs, or memories might come up as to why you couldn't or shouldn't be at a 10 in terms of your well-being? Just as Walt Whitman said, be curious rather than judgmental. Just allow yourself to be aware of what's going on in there. Take a deep breath, open your eyes. And just tap where I tap and repeat back what I say. I choose to feel more awesome.
I choose to feel more awesome.
And I choose to love and accept myself.
And I choose to love and accept myself.
I choose to feel more awesome.
I choose to feel more awesome.
And I choose to love and honor myself.
And I choose to love and honor myself.
I choose to feel more awesome.
I choose to feel more awesome.
Even if I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Even if I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Why not feel even better?
Why not feel even better?
So I choose to feel even more awesome.
So I choose to feel even more awesome.
And I choose to deeply and completely.
And I choose to deeply and completely.
Love, honor, and accept myself.
Love, honor, and accept myself.
And maybe everybody else.
And other people as well.
Because that would be pretty darn awesome.
Because that would be awesome.
I choose to feel more awesome.
I choose to feel more awesome.
I choose to feel really awesome.
I choose to feel really awesome.
Because why the heck not?
Because why not?
So what gets in the way of me feeling awesome?
So what gets in the way of me feeling awesome?
What else might I be feeling?
What else might I be feeling?
That doesn't feel as awesome.
That doesn't feel as awesome.
And so it gets in the way of me feeling more awesome.
So it might get in the way of me feeling more awesome.
And I choose to process that.
I choose to process that.
If there's something I need to know,
If there's something I need to know,
I'm allowing myself to have more clarity.
I'm allowing myself to have more clarity.
And if it's something I can't deal with right now,
And if it's something I can't deal with right now,
something that's going to be in the future,
something in the future,
I'll deal with it then.
I'll deal with it then.
And allow myself to feel awesome right now.
And allow myself to feel really awesome right now.
Because not feeling awesome right now
Because not feeling awesome right now
isn't going to make that thing any better.
isn't going to make that thing any better.
I cannot feel bad enough
I cannot feel bad enough
to improve anything in my life.
to improve anything in my life.
But when I'm feeling awesome,
But when I'm feeling awesome,
I find all kinds of resources
I find all kinds of resources,
inside and outside,
inside and outside,
to make things better for myself and others.
to make things better for myself and others.
And why on earth would I not want that?
Why would I not want that?
And if there's any reasons coming up,
If if there's any reasons coming up.
I'm allowing myself to process them.
We just allow ourselves to process them.
Part of me would love to feel more awesome.
Part of me would love to feel more awesome.
And I choose to be open to the possibility
And I choose to be open to the possibility
that the extent to which I'm not feeling awesome
that the extent to which I'm not feeling awesome
is the extent to which I'm resisting feeling awesome.
is the extent to which I'm resisting feeling awesome.
Not because I'm bad or stupid,
Not because I'm bad or stupid.
not because I'm weak or lazy,
Not because I'm weak or lazy,
but because something in my programming tells me
but because something in my programming tells me
it might not be appropriate to feel awesome right now.
it might not be appropriate to feel awesome right now.
It might not be safe to feel awesome right now.
It might not be safe to feel awesome right now.
I might have all kinds of reasons
I might have all kinds of reasons
for not feeling awesome right now.
for not feeling awesome right now.
And if that reason feels valid,
And if that reason feels valid,
I can honor that.
I can honor that.
I choose to honor my feelings,
I choose to honor my feelings,
even if it's not an awesome feeling,
even if it's not an awesome feeling,
because I'm doing the best I can,
because I'm doing the best I can,
given the circumstances I'm in
given the circumstances I'm in,
and given the programming that I have.
and given the programming that I have.
And I'm allowing myself to keep getting better
And I'm allowing myself to keep getting better
so that I can feel more awesome more often.
so I can feel more awesome more often.
And the more I allow myself to do that,
And the more I allow myself to do that,
the more I can share that awesomeness with others,
the more I can share that awesomeness with others,
show them how to feel more awesome,
show them how to feel more awesome,
and create a more awesome world.
and create a more awesome world.
And how awesome would that be?
That would be so awesome.
Clearing what limits my awesomeness,
Clearing what limits my awesomeness
and I'm loving myself in the process
and loving myself in the process
because I'm worthy and deserving of that.
because I am worthy and deserving of that.
And the more I allow myself to love myself,
The more I allow myself to love myself,
the more awesomeness I experience
the more awesomeness I experience
in body, mind, and spirit.
in body, mind, and spirit.
And take a deep breath. And close your eyes and rate yourself again on a scale of 0 to 10. And hopefully you've moved more in moved the needle towards awesomeness. And and it also may just be that as we're tapping and peeling layers of the onion, you may get more clear about, oh, I know it's something. I felt like something was bugging me and I wasn't sure what it was. And you may have more clarity about that.
Mm.
And then either you can recognize, okay, there's a misunderstanding that I can move past, or I can come up with solutions and figure out, all right, how am I going to address that? How am I going to take care of that issue and then get back to more awesomeness?
I love how both really work the same way. Whether you're tapping, I accept myself, despite this negative situation or perceived negative situation, similar to tapping on being awesome, because I think our brains tend to come up with, like you were saying, the objections. And for me, I've always sort of had a problem with affirmations because I'm like, I can tell myself this all I want, but if I have an internal program or reinforcement from a young age or a trauma, be it however small, me telling myself something with my conscious brain isn't going to change that I have this program inside or this habit or whatever it might be that's contrary to this thing I'm trying to create. So I love what you said about tapping and affirmation can bring up some of that gunk that might be inhibiting us from having that thing that we are affirming for ourselves. So yeah. That was very awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing is that I kind of use the phrase in the tapping round, but I like to say that the extent to which we're not experiencing what we say we want tends to be the extent to which we are resisting it. Yeah. And when I say that, people are like, what? No, that's just crazy. I'm not resisting being happy. I'm not resisting being healthy. I'm not resisting being wealthy. Well, if I were to watch your day-to-day behavior, that might tell a different story. Yeah. And it's not that we're bad or stupid or weak or lazy. We have programming. Mm-hmm. Just today, I was reading through some comments on YouTube, and someone was talking about money. So, that's one of the things that everybody says they want more money, and they don't realize how they sabotage that, because, we will make our affirmations. I'm rich, I'm happy, I'm successful. And we don't realize that we're resisting that. The extent to which we don't have more money or more health or whatever it might be is the extent to which we're resisting it, because we have programming about why it's not safe. So this woman was commenting, she goes, I totally had this memory while I was tapping one of this video of when I was a kid. Payday was the day that my dad had money to go out and get drunk, and he'd come home and be violent. And then the rest of the
Wow.
week was fine. So payday was always the most dangerous day. Money always meant pain. And hadn't been consciously thinking of that in terms of trying to be more financially successful. And she was like, oh my God, I
Right.
never made that connection. That
Yes.
So we may have this about all kinds of things, about our physical health. And it
Mhm.
may be that we identify ourselves, if we, once when we were a child and we're sick and we got a lot of sympathy or something like that, or someone said, oh, you're just always sick, aren't you? I was like, oh, I guess that's who I am.
Mm.
Or you're always depressed, you're always angry, you're always anxious. And so we take that on as an identity, and we don't even realize why it might be there.
Right.
So going through the tapping, we allow ourselves to get clear on what is that stuff that's going on that I'm not even aware of. They have that the type of the tip of the iceberg, and there's that picture where you see what we see above the water, and then the giant part underneath.
Mhm.
And that's the thing, is as we're tapping, we allow ourselves to get more clear about that stuff that's going on underneath, and what's really driving our emotions and driving our behavior.
So, what if we could teach children how to tap, and then they wouldn't have to have a huge iceberg under the water? I mean, is that a relevant proposal? And if so, do you have any tips for those of us who have children or grandchildren, or in our lives some way have young people? Because as a parent of young children myself, I frequently, and someone who's very interested in mental health, I'm frequently thinking about it from a proactive standpoint or trying to be preventative. How can we start young to set our children and our youth up for more success, so they don't have to tap through 75,000 things that are limiting them as adults, but maybe they have just a couple? Or do you have recommendations about when to tap for children, or how, or anything like that we could touch on before we wrap up today?
Yeah, well, thank
Before
you,
we get,
Brad.
we'll
I
have
do.
some time for questions. We'll have some time for questions too after
Yeah.
this little bit here too.
No, absolutely. Years ago, I was thinking about how, so often I'm working with adults and that we're tapping through, and we're dealing with issues that happened at a very young age, and I'll be tapping with somebody in their 70s, and they're limiting their success in some way. And as we're tapping, we can trace it back to, oh, well, in the second grade, I remember I was playing with this truck, and a friend took the truck away, and I just realized, people are always going to take things away from me, so I shouldn't have nice things. It's like, oh, if someone had tapped you that day, it's like, even though I think I'm not allowed to have nice things, even
Yeah.
though I think this means something about me, and it doesn't, and clear that up, and what might have been the trajectory of this person's life,
Mm.
and what could happen. So we talked about this the other day. That's when I wrote the book, The Wizard's Wish, because I loved reading bedtime stories to my kids. So I wanted to come up with a fun way of talking about tapping in a bedtime story way. So it's about this wizard who finds that by tapping these magical points, you get these yucky feelings out. And you can go to thewizardswish.com online, and you can read it online for free. So there are all kinds of initiatives to get tapping into schools. My good friend, Dr. Peta Stapleton, who is an associate, she's a professor of psychology at Bond University in Australia, absolute, straight line psychologist when she started out, and and first heard about this tapping was like very skeptical, and has become one of the leading researchers in tapping. And she created a program, Tapping in the Classroom, and it's so wonderful. The country of Slovenia, I think it's Slovenia, actually paid for their teachers, the public education system, to go through this process, to go through that program, to learn how to teach tapping to kids. So there's all kinds of great examples of tapping being used in schools. I have some video, a brief series of videos on tapping for kids that I did when my daughter was just a young girl. So they would be more relatable for kids. And you can find those on YouTube.
Okay, wonderful. I know for me, I try, if my children are really upset about something or have substantial pain for some reason. My daughter got a sliver the other day and she was just screaming. She didn't understand why it was painful. So I was just tapping on her. She's often very resistant to it. Like, stop touching me, stop touching me.
There are times that we just want to be in a bad mood. There are times where something has pissed me off and I'm like, I know I could tap right now, but I'm just not going to, because I'm in a snit.
Just gonna be here now. Yes.
Get away from the tapping.
Yes. Yeah, I totally.
We want to honor our feelings,
yeah.
and also have that the tapping to offer.
Yeah.
And kids can often be more receptive than adults, because adults will go, that looks silly, and kids are like, oh, fun, magic points.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. When you said that about under the eye being for stomach, I was excited to learn that. I didn't know what the points corresponded to. And my older daughter, who's 7, tends to have stomach aches on a quasi-regular basis, but can't determine what they are about. And I think it's probably emotional or changes or stress or whatnot some of the time. So I was excited to hear about that, because I think she might even be more open to just a little rub under her eye, right, versus like trying to say something or having me say something and going through all the points. It's nice to know there isn't really a wrong way to do it. It sounds like any stimulation on these points at all is most likely going to help in some way to restore some balance to the energy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That relieves some stress maybe on people, like, I don't know if I'm going to do it wrong. It's in a way
you can't do it wrong.
Very good. That's
anything that you do is going to be at least somewhat beneficial.
Yeah, wonderful. So we do have a little bit of time left with Brad here. If there are any other questions, if you here in the audience would like to ask something, please go ahead and drop it in the chat or in the Q&A section of the webinar. And we could get a couple of more interactive questions going for Brad. And Brad, I can ask you while we're waiting, Absolutely, just to see if there's anything else that we haven't talked about today that you would like to talk about, or that you think would be informative or helpful for the people here in our audience.
There's so many places you can go with this. For me, it's just looking at what even just taking that process we did earlier of on a scale of 0 to 10 towards awesomeness, and just doing that for yourself and asking yourself, what would make my life better, and what might stop me? Mm-hmm. And so often we don't allow ourselves to really look at that. And how could I allow myself to feel better? And there may be certain things that we're struggling with. We may be struggling with anxiety or depression, or some condition. It could be a physical condition, and recognizing, okay, I'm not going to say, well, I'm just going to magically tap on my face and this condition is going to magically disappear in 5 minutes. Now, there are times that we see remarkable results in a short amount of time. I'm not going to be making any claims about a panacea of, all of your physical and mental health issues are magically gone in 5 minutes by any means. But it's allowing ourselves to look at, okay, what do I have control over? because so often these conditions will then have all these other issues, like, I may be feeling guilty about how it's affecting my family.
Mhm.
I may be feeling a sense of hopelessness, thinking that it's never going to get better, or whatever it might be, and I might be struggling with acceptance. And so I can be tapping on, I'm not, if I, I'm totally open to the idea of, if I can, clear depression by tapping, wonderful. But in the meantime, if I can clear up the associated experience that I might be having, if I can clear up, I feel really guilty about how this affects my family. All
Mhm.
right, me feeling guilty isn't going to help them. They're probably already feeling bad for what I'm going through. They're not going to say, oh yes, well, your guilt is definitely going to make it all that much better for us. And so it gives us permission to process that and say, all right, I'm going to give myself permission to release whatever I can release, whatever
Yeah,
I'm able to let go of, in order to raise my level of well-being physically and emotionally.
that's a really, really valid point, because so much there's the thing and then there's the reactivity about the thing. So we may be having, even if you're in physical discomfort or have something like that, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in pain. And then I'm in pain and I can't do this thing I wanted to do. And I'm having a hard time being the person I
Yeah.
want to be. You have the whole collection of things around the actual challenge. So
Yeah.
that's a really helpful perspective to think about how we can tap around a condition or around a circumstance that may be out of our control per- or perceived to be out of our control. But there are
Right.
things that are in our control. And if we can tap on those things and begin to loosen up some of that stuff, then we're going to have a much easier time with the thing that is a bigger topic or something that may not be in
Right.
our direct control.
If I break my leg, tapping, yeah. Again, I'm open to miracles. So I don't want to limit, I don't put, limiting ideas that this can't work. But I'm not going to, assume that in 5 minutes of tapping, my leg is going to be healed. However, the anger about what happened, I don't need that stress. And that,
No.
and that stress, the body has a natural ability to heal. And all of these other uncomfortable feelings can limit our ability to heal. It slows us down. When we're in a state of stress and the cortisol is pumping through our body, that limits our immune system.
Mhm.
You want to boost your immune system, clear out stress. So as we're dealing with whatever, I'm going to let the doctor set my leg, but I'm going to deal with the disappointment over, I was going to play soccer next week and I'm obviously not going to be able to do that.
Mhm.
I'm frustrated. I feel guilty about, I'm not able to help out around the house as much.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, that guilt isn't going to help anybody. And that uncomfortable feeling in the body is limiting the body's like, okay, I'm trying to heal your leg, but you also want me to deal with the guilt and you also want me to feel disappointment. And hey, so allowing ourselves to clear that stuff up so that we can put all of our positive healing energy where it's most needed.
Brad, if I can jump in with a quick question.
Absolutely,
Yes,
DJ.
absolutely.
I saw in your bio that you've been teaching tapping on a corporate level as well, that you teach some businesses and business leaders about tapping. How do we apply this in like a business setting or in a more professional setting?
How do you not? There's, because corporate is synonymous with stress for so many people. So at one level, you can use it in terms of the stress that's going on, because it can be such a stressful environment. And if you pull back and think about it, that's insane, because we want people to be as clear thinking and productive as possible, and stress limits our productivity. I was teaching a workshop at a Silicon Valley startup years ago, and I brought someone up on stage, and I gave him a tennis ball. And I said, "Okay, I want you to throw this tennis ball, but I first want you to tense your arm as much as possible, and now try to throw that tennis ball." And of course, the ball just dropped. It's like, because if you can't move your arm, it's like, we had this idea of I do my best work under pressure. It's nonsense. Sometimes we only do work under pressure. And then we tell ourselves, I do my best work under pressure. But when you have time and the emotional bandwidth to use more of your brain, you're going to come up with better solutions and better outcomes. So right at the level of just dealing with that stress so that people are more clear-headed. And then also in terms of positive tapping, in terms of setting goals for the company and limiting thinking about, well, we can only do this, we can only do that. It's like, all right, even though we have this limiting idea about what's possible for us, and really creating that space for more expansive thinking in terms of what the company can do. And also just interpersonal things. When there's disagreements between people and we get heated and we get defensive and that we go into fight or flight and that shuts down, and as a mediation tool to be able to tap. If people could, when they're talking to each other, would do tapping, if we could bring countries together at Camp David and have them tapping and calm down the defensiveness and say, okay, look, what we're trying to create is an outcome that works for everyone. And we're so invested in all of this other stuff that may have nothing to do with the situation. If we can calm that down, we can create a much more peaceful environment.
So practically speaking, I mean, if a company is willing to be innovative and trying to do really effective and smart things in their organization, a staff meeting would be a good time to introduce tapping, right? Like anytime
amazing
there's
time
a
to
gathering.
do tapping. But you have all of these cutting edge companies that are like, we're not, we don't do that. And yet you'd be surprised at the people who are using tapping. I have tapped with people at very high levels in the arts, in business, in sports. A lot of people, unfortunately, either it's their secret weapon they don't want other people to know about, or they just don't want people to know that they tap on their face. But there are Olympic level athletes tapping. There are World Series winning teams that use tapping, Super Bowl winning teams that use tapping. All kinds of people at very high levels, but still are not not yet as willing to come out and say, oh, I totally endorse tapping. And there's going to be a point where someone's going to come out and say that, and then it's going to be more cool. But in the meantime, people, and especially, corporations, and a lot of corporate mindset is stuck in the 19th century.
Yeah.
And so that kind of innovation they're not open to it. And I'm not trying to shame anybody, but I totally get it. I had been an actor, and during my acting time, I had gone to Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Clown College. So I was a little more open-minded and had done some sillier things in my past, so that when I was introduced to tapping, it was not like, oh my God, that looks stupid. So I totally get where people are at. And we have, for a lot of people in our upbringing, rule number one is never look stupid. And so for a lot of people, when they see that, it's like, oh, I can't do that. Even if I'm going to do it in the privacy of my own home, I'm still afraid that people might find out. So as more people find out about it and see the benefits of it, then, I do expect that governments and corporations and every area is going to start to recognize that these mind-body tools can help us experience more well-being and more success.
Absolutely. We do have one last question, I think, before we wrap up here. Request for any resources that show the tapping points and what they correspond to, like the corresponding body part. Do you have anything that you've developed or that you would recommend, perhaps?
Yeah, on my website, tapwithbrad.com, right there on the front page, there's a little drawing that shows where the tapping points are. And you can also look up acupuncture charts that will show you what the different meridians are and the different organs that are related to that. real quick, the generally what's used is this point is associated with sadness and trauma, anger and resentment, fear, embarrassment and humiliation, shame and guilt, fear again, low self-esteem. And then the top of the head is a meeting of several meridians. So it deals with a lot of different things. And then there are other points that are used in other tapping modalities. And you can certainly Google that and find all kinds of charts about what different points are used and what emotions and meridians they're associated with.
Thank you so much, Brad. That was
My
extremely informative. I hope everyone else found it as interesting and informative as I did. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today for this webinar. Thank you so much, Brad.
My pleasure. I am fun hanging out with you. And I really appreciate what all of you are doing. And I greatly appreciate this opportunity to share this work, because I do know the benefits that it can have. And it's just a matter of more people hearing about it. So I greatly appreciate you allowing me to use this platform to share that. And I greatly appreciate everyone who's willing to watch and follow along with this, even against whatever resistance you might have, and see how it might have benefits for your life.
Fantastic.
Outstanding. And Brea, if you could remind us, those of you who saw this and thought, man, I wish my wife or husband or kids or teacher or boss had seen this, how can folks find a replay of this?
So all of the videos are available from our webinar series on Amity. So it is available there. The recording should be uploaded probably by tomorrow. And that is Amity Community, which is part of the Mighty Networks. And it is in the link that you received if you received an email or if you saw the social media post. All of our events for the Integrative Mental Health Summit are hosted in the Amity Community. Free to join. Just put your email address in there and you'll be able to access the free videos of past webinars, but also this webinar today with Brad.
And I must insist on reminding everyone that Amity is the mental health support community that is created and hosted by Brea's organization, Journey's Dream, doing incredible stuff with that. And it really is a great place, not just to see these videos, but to get all kinds of resources and help and suggestions and just affirmation that, as we talk about with the Integrative Mental Health Summit, everyone's on the continuum. And it's so nice to participate in a community where folks recognize that and affirm that and are supportive of that. So.
Yes, thank you, DJ. Yes, absolutely. Amity is a place for everyone, where we come with open hearts and open minds to support each other with wherever we are in our mental, emotional states. So thank you. And thank you, DJ, for co-hosting the series with us. Mensa Research Institute is a phenomenal friend and partner of Journey's Dream and in all things Integrative Mental Health Summit. So
absolutely.
Always a pleasure to be working with you, sir.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you who joined us today. Keep your eyes open for emails and social media posts as we announce our next event, our event for next month. And as Brea mentioned before, you'll also start seeing more and more information as we preview our upcoming second annual Integrative Mental Health Summit in October. So thanks again for joining us, everyone. Thank you to Brad and to Brea, and we'll see you again next time.
Wonderful. Take care.